So I'm going to do things a little bit differently here. I'm going to record my voice as I watch the video and give some feedback regarding what things went during the rainy race day. So the one thing to note, the difference between the beginning of the video here and the end later is how much water's on the track, how hard it's raining, and also in different areas of the track. Just following the pace car here. Test there to see how much traction I had right in that spot. It let loose a little bit. So we start off lining up side by side, and then when the pace car takes off, we go single file. People can warm up the tires, and then right about here is where we go side by side. And you see the pace car turn off its blinky lights in the corner before the straightaway where the start finish is. And we're supposed to keep the same pace throughout this straight until the green flag is waved. So the pace car here will take a dive into the hot pits. And now we wait for green. And for some reason we didn't get the green. And I later find out that Cameron, who's behind me, said the guy that should have been next to him wasn't next to him. He was back too far. And so the person who had the green flag in their hand was looking at us, and they shook their head no as we were driving by, indicating that we weren't in good formation for a start. And so we then go back to single file, try to maintain the pace car's pace, go around one more time, line up again, hoping that the person or people who weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing realize that they were the reason for not starting that pass by the start-finish line. We'll line up appropriately, and we'll get the start next time. I don't know if that ultimately impacted the race. Maybe just made the track a little bit more wet at the end, but it wasn't too big of a deal. Just going around. So I qualified in first position, which means that I lead around, so it's my job to kind of set the pace. If the pace car isn't there, trying to maintain the same speed. I wasn't paying attention to the actual speed the pace car was going, so I'm just kind of probably going by RPM sound more than I was speed. I don't believe I can see the speed on my AIM dash. I could probably set it up to, but I just don't have it there, and I don't even know where it is, because speed just doesn't matter unless you're trying to hit the same speed at an entry point or an exit point. So you can see in the rearview mirror we're starting to line up. Super disappointed we didn't have the camera working, but at this point we're lined up. We'll round the last corner and we'll await the green flag again once we cross the start-finish line. The track there at that corner and that side of the track seemed drier than the other side. That was one of the things I noticed in the first lap or two. And there's green. So thankfully I had enough traction and everything to get in front of Tyler. It makes the first corner, wet corner, a little bit easier. And you'll see throughout the video that I'll be hunting around for more traction. I've been in a few tracks in the rain, and this one seems to be the worst in terms of if you're following the normal line that people are driving when it's dry, it's super wet in those spots or in that section of the track. And eventually I pick up the fact that, there's more traction other places than on the normal driving line. And sometimes You can avoid the slippery spots, sometimes you can't. There it's dry because of the tree, so that was helpful. Although I found the water, as you can see. So we had slicks on, and there's at least three, I think just three Miatas that had rain tires on. So you'll see them pass, and eventually we'll get lapped, or I'll get lapped by one of them. Little blinky lights on the dash there just flash white back and forth. That's saying that's my fastest lap of either the session or the day, depending on how I reset it. But that's going to be the fastest lap of the race every time that flashes. And you can see me out of behind me. I was a little upset both of them went at the same time because they were well beyond the turn-in point where the corner was owned by me, but I think they were racing each other, so it didn't matter. They're probably in the same class, whereas I'm in a different class, so it didn't matter if I beat them or not. Horsepower than they do, and I thought, hey, why not? This is a race, let's just do what we can, the best we can. And so I pass him, knowing that he's probably going to have to pass me later. I should say, going to be able to pass me later. Probably worth mentioning I do have the traction control on, which does quite a bit to keep me straight. However, after it keeps me straight, it kind of stays active for a little while, so it slows me down quite a bit. So I'm not sure if it actually slowed me down more than it helped me, but it at least helped me. And my goal was to bring it home in one piece. This was my third of 3 race weekends or events that I had to go through in order to get rid of my novice status, my novice license, my X on the back of my car to indicate that I'm a newbie. And so I wanted to make sure I was successful without any issues. And in the end, you'll see that I was, thankfully. So maybe next time I'd take the traction control off. This time I had it on. watching my G meter in the lower right. There's something wrong with the acceleration and braking status. I must not have loaded the data correctly, so I don't have that information, but I still have the lateral left and right numbers. Normally I'm pulling 1Gs in corners over 1G, and now I'm barely cracking 3/4. See, the track is still somewhat dry there, but the rain on the windshield's indicating that that's changing. Blinky lights again. I think that ended up being my fastest lap of the race, which, by the way, I think was the second or third fastest overall. So even though I didn't finish second or third, I got the second or third fastest lap. So I'm starting to experiment with lines there. So you can see normally I'd be way over to the left if it were dry, but I was over to the right. This corner coming up was one corner where I didn't quite catch on that I should have been over to the right, where traction would have been better as I approached the corner. But never did it. It never struck me that I was driving. That's what I should be doing. Lots to keep track of. The different lines are amazingly kind of hard to follow. You kind of ingrain in your head where you should be, and you get used to driving in those spots, and to drive in the opposite spots really throws you off, especially while you're trying to concentrate on keeping the car straight and not spinning all the time. This corner right here is super slippery. A lot more slippery than I anticipated it being. And sometimes you see the black tire marks and you go, oh, that's a pretty obvious sign, and it is, but that's fine in the end. And when you're off the rain line, it's incredible. It feels like it's 2 to 3 times the amount of grip at this track, where if you're on the spot that people drive, it's a lot more slippery. part of the track is no longer significantly dry relative to the other side, so it's pretty universally wet at this point, although some spots have standing water in the sides. Thing I haven't done yet is taking a look at my data on how I approach some of those corners in the wet, like the one that we were just at. It'd be interesting to see taking one line, the rain line versus the non-rain line, and see which one is faster. It feels like the non-rain line, in other words, the normal line, could potentially be faster in some corners depending on how much traction you have. So I think if I were to race at this track a lot and it were raining frequently, then you can kind of figure out which corner you should be on the rain line or which corner you may not want to be. That's my first time taking the inside lane on this corner, so I remembered, hey, there's probably more traction over there, so lots of learning going on that weekend, especially on slicks in the rain. Quite a bit of pooling in some of those spots. the inside of the corners. You can start to see the windshield fog up as well. I didn't know how to turn the defrost on. I know now, after the race. That piece of paper that's flapping above the gear selector, I removed that and the buttons are hidden underneath. So that's where they are. I removed the paper. That list is a list of all the things that I'm reminded of while I get in the car, making sure I have everything done, and I've done it enough now. I think I don't need that list anymore. As you can see there, I was pushing the limits a bit too hard and went almost off track. Everybody did a great job. My understanding is nobody went 4 wheels off. And so, congratulations to everybody for keeping it green the whole time. I kind of thought we were going to get a yellow at some point. Somebody would spin out, but nobody did. So, that's awesome. to the flagging station because they're trying to tell me somebody's coming up behind me. So I'm looking for him. This is the Miata that laps me. You can see in their rear view mirror that there's another car coming up. This is Cameron. I'm sure he was thrilled and smiling ear to ear underneath that helmet. Good job, Cameron. E2 is on slicks. There's the white flag, by the way. E2 is on slicks. I don't know if it's because of his lighter weight car or what, but he was definitely moving better around the track than I was. Oh, there's some hydroplaning. There's a bit of standing water there. And the Miata is behind me again. Let's see if it passed me here. That guy also lapped me. You watch the Miata up there turn that corner, he's going to hit a huge puddle and make a big splash right about there. Pretty wet out there. Well, that concludes the race. Again, we all made it successfully, so that's great. Thanks for watching, and appreciate your time. If you have any feedback, let me know.